And we're continuing with the 9th chapter of The Embroidered Sunset by Joan Aiken. Bloody cat come in the window again, said Gates. Harbin was on the telephone. You'll fix it then, he was saying. Well, yes. You have the address. Green Morris Estate Wagon. CRU 299P. Something simple, act of God stuff, I'll leave it to you. No rush unless he starts acting suspiciously. Yes, keep him tailed. What's that? How much longer am I staying here? A month, maybe a couple of months. Stoker's getting the place in Palma fixed up. Right, then you'll be in touch. Good. He put back the receiver. What's the idea having him done? Said Gates. I don't like loose ends, people who can talk. He turned round, saw the cat, and said, Kick that animal out. There's liable to be another act of God here and now. Or there's liable to be another act of God here and now. Gates giggled. I found an old bow and arrows out in that ornamental summer house place by the shrubbery, he said. The cat'd make a nice target, wouldn't it? Soggy fat brute. He grabbed it, his hands sinking inches deep into its thick, shaggy fur, carried it to the window, and shot it onto the roof. The cat, meanwhile, struggling and emitting a sort of whining snarl. Come on, baby brother, my ducky. You aren't wanted here, that's for sure. Baby brother, muttered Harbin. Judas, what a name in any case. What were you doing out by the summer house? All right, keep calm, I'm a legal citizen. I haven't escaped from anywhere. I can go where I like. Harbin looked at him for several moments in silence, his pale stare unnerved Gates, who muttered defensively. Anyway, it was after dark, pitch dark it was, when you were watching telly night before last. I suddenly felt I'd go crazy if I didn't get a breath of air. Nobody saw me, nobody, I swear. You do realize, Harbin said with controlled quietness, that if anybody who knows about us sees you, they'd just naturally put two and two together and work out that I'm in the neighborhood too. You do realize that. It's not going to be necessary for me to fix up another act of God. Gates was frantic. Look, honest, nobody saw me, but okay. I won't do it again if it worries you so. But shan't I half be glad to get away from this goddamn morgue? Anyway, if you're worried about people putting two and two together, how about Linda? I don't notice you fixing up any acts of God for her. She's wanted to run this place, isn't she? Harbin said reasonably. Time enough to tidy up Linda after we leave. Anyway, she's changed her name, and it was all years ago. No need for anyone to connect her with that business. Besides, watch it, said Gates suddenly. They could hear footsteps on the landing outside the closed door. Gates quietly shot the new brass bolt. A moment later, there were 3 taps. Relieved, he opened the door, and Mrs. Marsham came in with a tray of food. She looked less calm than usual. Her hands shook a little as she put down the tray, and there was the hint of a flush on her prominent cheekbones. I believe I've got something, she said. Mince again! Goats peered at the food disgustedly. On what? Harbin's pale eyes met those of Mrs. Marsham. On Fred. What? Old one-track Linda, sighed Gates, helping himself to a large portion of mince and starting to gobble it. Don't you ever think of anything but your lost love? Harbin said. What have you got? Mrs. Marsham helped him to food, but he did not touch it. He moved his gloved right arm restlessly. This Culpepper girl, the one who's just arrived with her aunt, she had an uncle Wilberforce Culpepper, who emigrated to America 20 years back from Liverpool. Family originally lived in this village. Harbin sat looking at her in silence. Gates, however, burst into a guffaw and nearly choked on his mince. Wasn't she the one you didn't want here? Pardon me if I laugh, but that's really rich, isn't it? Where is the uncle now? Said Harbin. Lucy answered the telephone, and it rang as Mrs. Marsham seemed to have disappeared. Fiona speaking. How's the epidemic? Running its course. Mrs. M says your coming here is a fine idea, and when can you start? Tomorrow, if she likes. Mrs. Thwaite at the post office is going to mind young Oedipus, and I can probably hitch a lift up in the mail van. Grand, we'll see you then. I'd better ring off now. I was in the middle of dealing out the mince. As she hung up, Lucy suddenly remembered with a pang of guilt that she had promised to call the police and tell them if Aunt Fennel turned up. She had never done so. She darted back to the dining room, where the old people were patiently waiting, doled out mince and vegetables onto plates, and then returned to the phone. "Is that Kirby Police Station? Oh, my name's Culpepper. I was in your office yesterday reporting that I'd lost my aunt. Well, I've found her again. I'm just ringing to tell you." "When did you find her, miss, and where was she?" Feeling abashed and guilty, Lucy related the circumstances of Aunt Fennel's recovery. "And why did you not report the matter sooner, miss?" "I'm terribly sorry, but with one thing and another, I guess I just forgot," Lucy said humbly. "You've given the police a lot of unnecessary trouble, miss. We've put out search calls and made inquiries, added her name to our missing persons list." "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. There's a crisis going on at the moment, you see, with a measles epidemic where we are now." "Where is that?" "Apley Hall. Apley Old Hall. Wildfell Hall. Old People's Home." She could hear him repeat the words as he wrote them down. "Very well, miss. Thank you for calling. But do remember that if you waste our time with false alarms, we aren't so likely to believe something's wrong another time." "No, I do see," said Lucy, thinking. "You weren't exactly falling over yourself to leave me yesterday, friend. Well, thanks a lot. I do know how busy the police are. Anyway, she's not likely to come to any harm at Apley Old Hall." Lucy hung up and turned to find Mrs. Marsham had come into the office. "There you are, Miss Culpepper. They're all waiting for their pudding. I couldn't think where you had got to." "Oh, gosh, I'm sorry," said Lucy, wondering why the matron suddenly seemed so annoyed. Damn it. The old things hadn't been left for more than 4 minutes. They could hardly be finished yet. "I'll go and see them right away." And that is the end of chapter 9.